Chipmunk wasn't just a really good basic flying trainer, it set the standard for how flying training should feel, and that's in air forces right around the world. I'm Ben Griffiths. I'm a co-owner and operator of the mighty de Havilland Chipmunk. So in the mid-1940s, the Tiger Moth, which had trained literally thousands of military pilots for the Allied air forces all around the world, was starting to look a bit dated. So there was a guy called Władysław Jakimuk, who was a designer at de Havilland in their Canadian operation, and he was looking at a more modern trainer. The Chipmunk first flew in 1946. And it was going to be a primary trainer for military air arms all around the world, most successfully, most well known for the Royal Air Force, of course. So first built, flown in Canada, but a lot of military air arms all around the world took on the Chipmunk to be their primary trainer. And it was really to take pilots who traditionally would have trained on string, fabric and wood biplanes like the Tiger Moth and take them forward into the jet age to get them ready for enclosed cockpits, part metal construction and just a different type of flying. So the de Havilland Aircraft Company was set up and was based in the UK, predominantly at Hatfield Aerodrome in Hertfordshire, but they also had some manufacturing plants during the Second World War. And one of the things that de Havilland, like a lot of manufacturing companies in the aerospace scene during the Second World War were doing, is they set up other factories overseas, obviously away from bombing raids from Germany. One of those places was Canada. So de Havilland Canada produced a lot of de Havilland aircraft during the war, most notably the Mosquito fighter bomber. But the Chipmunk is what they picked up after the war and started manufacturing with great success in Canada before their manufacturing also moved back to Hatfield and other sites in the UK and abroad too. Why was it so popular? Well, the controls on this airplane are really well harmonised. Some pilots, including test pilots, will tell you that it actually handles better than a Spitfire. In fact, some people call it the poor man's Spitfire because it's cheaper to operate, but it still has all of the enjoyment of flying the heavier piston warbirds. All the controls are really harmonised. It feels almost frictionless when you're moving the control stick around, and that makes it really good for things like aerobatics or flying in formation with other airplanes. It's a brilliant primary trainer. It's much beloved in the general aviation community today, and people like me flying them all over the world. So the 80th anniversary of the Chipmunk in 2026 is also going to be notable because it's going to be the final year of military operations of the Chipmunk with the Portuguese Air Force. They've been flying it for literally decades. I understand that's the last military air force that's still using it for primary training, but of course in the UK, the Royal Air Force's Battle of Britain Memorial flight still has two Chipmunks. One of those was actually used as a spy plane over Berlin during the Cold War, but they really use them to take modern day jet pilots and teach them how to fly piston tail draggers like the Spitfire and the Hurricane. So basically, if you can fly the Chipmunk really well, that will set you up nicely to go on to fly those heavier, more complex aircraft with retractable undercarriage, more powerful engines, and eventually you'll be solo. There really isn't any reason you can't keep these going indefinitely. It's like any old machine though, you know, the maintenance checks on it are really fastidious. Engineers are looking at all sorts of things, whether it's wear and tear or what are called life components. So one of the most challenging things about the Chipmunk is the wing spars, which are buried deep inside. Those have what's called a fatigue life. So if you go and fly aerobatics in these things, every time you go flying, you're going to eat into that fatigue life really quickly. When the wing spar is out of fatigue hours, that wing is basically scrap and you need to get a new wing. Now, for something that's 80 years old, you can't just go down to the shop and buy them off the shelf. There are sources available for most of the parts on the Chipmunk, but the older it gets, the fewer around there are going to be. So we're marshalling the hours quite carefully on all of those items that are going to one day drop dead. But provided you can find the parts that have still got time on them, the engineers do an amazing job keeping them flying. Most of the engineers will know the airplane they work on intimately because they deal with it year after year, sometimes through multiple owners. And they've seen people buy a Chipmunk, fly them for decades, retire, and then sell them on to the next generation. I think the key point for me about owning an airplane like this is we're not so much owners, we're custodians. So when I was a kid, I always wanted to join the Royal Air Force. My paternal grandfather had been in the Air Force between the wars, and he'd been involved in places out east, that we now know as Iraq, Afghanistan and things like that, mainly doing the air policing role. But then later he was involved with the Schneider Trophy down at Colshot on the south coast, where they were preparing the Supermarine S5 racer, of course for that famous Schneider Trophy race. Sadly, he died when I was only 4, so I never got to hear those experiences from him firsthand, but I had a memento of a photograph album of all his experiences, and that really inspired me to try and get into aviation. Sadly, the Royal Air Force had different ideas and I didn't get in. I came back to flying much later, just over 20 years ago, when I had a trial flying lesson as a gift from my wife. I don't think she or I realised at that time that this was going to lead on to a very long association with this aeroplane, the Chipmunk. But I'd been flying and learning on the PA-28 purely by coincidence. I was introduced to a mutual friend, to somebody called Carol de Sola-Atkin, who flew a Chipmunk. We met up, she took me flying around the southeast of England one very sunny Saturday afternoon, and by the time we'd landed back, I was completely smitten and wanted to get into Chipmunk flying. Now fortunately, that group had a share going in it. I think I'd been played like a cheap violin basically, and ended up buying a share, and I flew that aeroplane for several years, and then back in 2020 acquired with a good friend of mine the aeroplane I'm currently flying, which is an ex-Army Chipmunk. It finished its career at Middle Wallop training future Army pilots, but prior to that had been used by the Royal Air Force for things like air experience flights and university air squadrons. But for me, I knew from that very first flight that this was the kind of flying that I wanted to do. It has vintage appeal. It's a fantastically manoeuvrable aircraft, and it just feels like when you're flying it, you're really part of it. So some of my most memorable flights in Chipmunks have really just happened, completely by accidents or by happy coincidences. One of my favourites was flying into the Royal International Air Tattoo down at Fairford. I'd actually been working at the Paris Air Show, was at an informal dinner and happened to sit next to this guy who was just joining the board of RIAT. And he happened to say, having served in the Royal Air Force, "You've got a Chipmunk, well you must fly into the air show." And of course, being a sort of lowly private pilot, I kind of took him at his word, didn't understand what was required, but a whole pack of information, all the joining instructions and the approach plates arrived in the post. On the appointed hour, I duly turned up, and I'd taken the lady who taught me to fly the Chipmunk, really, Carol de Sola-Atkin, along as my guest for the day, and we landed on that massive runway at Fairford. Now, I was really focused on making a good landing, and I hadn't really thought to look out the window particularly. I was just focused on what was ahead of me. And when we touched down on the runway, almost on the piano keys, the air trafficker kind of said, expedite quickly, next right, because there was an F-16 coming in behind us. But as I looked out the window to the left and could see the sort of tens of thousands of people watching, that really sort of crystallized the feeling that this was a very, very special experience. But I've had other amazing Chipmunk experiences too, flying and learning to fly formation and with a really good group of fellow pilots and friends has been a life-changing experience. Even flown information with incredible aircraft like the Swordfish, owned by the Navy Wings, the Royal Navy's heritage flight, and also R4D, which is the commemorative Air Force's US Navy version of the Dakota or DC-3 out of Shuttleworth as well. And those were life-changing moments. I'll never forget some of those experiences. And I think that really is why the Chipmunk is so special. It's just opened up this incredible world that many pilots will never get to experience. I have been really lucky, but I've also really tried to kind of give back to the community.
Yeah, I'm Tony de Bruin, and we're here today for VE Day in Duxford, and also the celebrations of the 80th anniversary of the first flight of the Chipmunk. So yesterday we came over from the Low Countries with 10 chipmunks. All of a sudden the chipmunk population in Belgium and Holland has mushroomed since a year or two. So we're very grateful for that, because it provides us a lot of joy, and we can train actually bigger formations back at our home territory. This involved I think 4 or 5 or 6 chipmunks even flying over from Holland, meeting at our home base for fuel. Then we flew over to Damon's Hall. We got another 4 5, 6 chipmunks coming in from Belgium. Then probably the count doesn't work out anymore, but anyway, it was 10 chipmunks in total. So our chipmunk is Golf Delta Hotel Charlie Charlie. We bought it direct from the Ministry of Defense at an auction in '97, a Philips auction. It originates from the Army Air Corps. I was flying in Middle Wallop for 23 years before '97, and then 23 years before it was a Royal Air Force aircraft. So it got transferred from the Royal Air Force, where it was flying in mainly up in Finningley, Yorkshire Way. Then got transferred. Then it spent all its time in Middle Wallop, and then we got it from the auction, and we based it in Antwerp originally, and then in Kortrijk, where we are still based today. Well, the Chipmunk is the original airplane we bought. I learned to fly on, did my PPL. It flies lovely. At a certain point in time, I wanted to sell it. My wife told me I couldn't sell it, which is probably quite unique in this business. So we kept it. Actually, she's now learning to fly in it, and she does perfect 3-point landings. To participate in the special celebrations of the 80th anniversary of the Chipmunk has just been outright amazing, and especially that we could come over with so many people from the Low Countries as well in order to support the event creates for a lot of satisfaction.
Hello there, my name is Ed van der Weert, and I'm basically owning this plane. I used to fly a British Chipmunk. I'm still flying the British Chipmunk, and this came on my path, so I thought, well, it's a beautiful plane, as you can see, nice and polished, so I bought it earlier this year, and I must say it's a lovely plane, and it looks very similar to a British Chipmunk, but it isn't, and I can say that this is the original one, and the British one is basically the adjusted version of it. So the Canadians obviously built this for the Royal Canadian Air Force, and this one model is from 1950, and it basically had all the features the Canadians used for their training practice. And later on, the Havilland also kind of offered it to the RAF, and the RAF changed a lot, and that's the Chipmunks you see around mostly. I think only 200 and something, 250 are built. I don't know exactly, but you guys probably will know. Of this aircraft. This one has been with the Canadian Air Force only at the beginning few years of its life. Then it was seconded to a civil kind of training school, but it was still maintained by the Royal Canadian Air Force, and it became civil somewhere during the 60s, I think. It was always bare metal polished, but without RCAF signage on it, and flew for many years in Canada. Then it went to America. It was in the US for a couple of years, and about, what was it exactly, 5-6 years ago it came to Europe, and I bought it from the previous owner, who was a German pilot. And now it's based in Seppe, the Netherlands, in our little museum. My badge says it here. It's called the Flying Museum, so we only have planes, vintage planes, who are actually flying, and it's based there. So we first flew from Seppe to Kortrijk. It's in Belgium, the southern part of Belgium, close to the French border. There we did the customs and we refueled, and then we took it in one go to Duxford. So basically flew from Kortrijk along the coast to Calais, and we climbed there to 6,500 feet. And the reason is that then we have only 1 minute across the English Channel where we can't reach one of the coastlines, so either the French or the British coastline. It's a beautiful sight, what can I say, you see the white cliffs of Dover nicely from the sky, and approaching the British island is quite special. So it's quite remarkable to be here, because the 80th anniversary, of this beautiful plane. And it's hard to see that it's already 80 years old, but still fun to fly, and a lot of enthusiasts around it. I must say that it's my first time I've been to a gathering with so many chipmunks. We've been also to a chip meet, as we call it, We had one in the Netherlands with only 10 planes, I think, and we've been last year to Halfpenny, where there also are chip meets or chip gatherings. There will be one in 2 weeks' time as well. But I must say this is an amazing display today, and how special it is to be at Duxford and realizing how many kind of enthusiastic people there are for vintage airplanes, and also to see our very kind of humble Chipmunk standing next to the Spitfires and all the kind of great planes. You know, the nickname of this plane is the poor man's Spitfire. Well, this is kind of, sometimes we kind of feel ourselves flying this beautiful plane that maybe it feels a little bit like a Spitfire. And I spoke to one of the Spitfire pilots this morning, and he said, well, if you can fly a Chipmunk, you can also fly a Spitfire. I won't test it, but I must say that's a great kind of thing to realize when you're flying the Chipmunk.
Hi, I'm Christophe Lanen from Belgium, and I'm here for the 80th birthday of the Havilland Chipmunk. So my background aviation-wise is it's all started with RC flying, radio-controlled model airplanes, and later on it started as a child, but later on the passion didn't die. It got worse, and I started flying gliders when I was 26. I'm 52 now. And about 5 years ago I started my PPL. Well, the rest is what you can see now. Well, in the beginning I wasn't very sure if I would ever buy something because it's not obvious to buy an airplane. But I was looking afterwards for something that ticked all the boxes, mainly also budget-wise. But I had some several expectations for the airplane. She should fly nice, and obviously the Chipmunk is an airplane. They don't call it the poor man's Spitfire for nothing. It's a very delightful airplane to fly. That's what they told me, and I had to believe them after the first flight. So yeah, the decision was made rather quickly. It's also a very beautiful plane in my mind. So that's why I started flying the Chipmunk. This aircraft in particular has quite a long service life with the RAF. She started her career at RAF Filton, I believe, in 1950. And she ended her military career at Woodvale in 1996. After that she got in private hands, and about 3 years ago I bought it and brought it back to Belgium. Well, I was privileged enough to be flying at the back of the formation, so I indeed had a great view, a general view of the big bow, and it was an amazing sight. I have to admit, I couldn't always look at it because I had to check the leader, but I did take a few seconds to take it all up, and it was an amazing sight.
I think there's something about the Chipmunk that brings everybody together. I call it the common thread, but it's just an amazingly sort of passionate community.